What if the final words of your childhood idol weren't lyrics, but a heart-wrenching truth that hits deeper than any song ever could? David Cassidy's last moments revealed a secret that stunned even his closest fans, a raw, powerful confession that might just change how you look at your own life. Stay with us, because once you hear what he said before he passed, you'll never forget it. His last words caught everyone off guard: raw, unfiltered, and devastating. As the curtain quietly fell on David Cassidy's life, the former heartthrob of the 70s delivered a single haunting sentence from his hospital bed in Florida. Once idolized by millions, Cassidy lay surrounded by machines, his body faltering from liver failure, but his mind unexpectedly clear enough to leave behind a message that would break hearts across generations. This isn't just the story of David Cassidy's final days. It's a journey into the fragile reality of fame, unraveling illusions, and the silent pain hidden behind the most charming smiles. In the early 1970s, David Cassidy was unstoppable. A teenage force of nature, he wasn't just famous, he was everywhere. From bedroom posters to record stores, Cassidy's name echoed across continents. As Keith Partridge on The Partridge Family, he sang his way into households weekly, charming fans with every note and every flash of his signature smile. The chaos he sparked rivaled Beatlemania. Frenzied crowds, stadiums sold out, and a fan club larger than Elvis and the Beatles combined. But while fans screamed in joy, Cassidy often screamed internally in silence. "I felt like I was suffocating," he once confessed. Underneath the glitter, the music, and the dazzling headlines lived a young man wrestling with his own identity. Behind the glossy image of the American dream was a reality Cassidy couldn't escape. Fame didn't just follow him, it hunted him. At times, it became physically dangerous. A cancelled show in London due to a deadly stampede among fans marked one of the first moments Cassidy began to truly fear the very spotlight that had lifted him up. That incident deeply shook him, dimming his love for the very stage that once gave him purpose. Cassidy wasn't just overwhelmed, he was emotionally unraveling beneath the weight of the public's relentless gaze. Fame may have made him a legend, but it also trapped him in a persona he no longer recognized. His boyish looks and golden locks were the face of innocence on TV. But behind the scenes, Cassidy was often battling demons no one could see. His charm was undeniable, but so was the fragility. He laughed easily in interviews, but those closest to him saw the sadness in his eyes. Addiction crept into his life like a shadow he couldn't shake, offering short-lived escapes that only deepened his despair. He entered rehab more than once, each time hoping to leave the pain behind. But like many stars, Cassidy's struggle with addiction was cyclical, progress followed by relapse. The image of Keith Partridge never aged, but David Cassidy did, and not always gracefully. Underneath it all, he was searching, not for fame, but for real connection. With his children, with friends, with himself. And yet, true intimacy always seemed to slip through his fingers. As one close friend said, David could be in a room full of people and still feel like the loneliest person there. When the spotlight began to dim and the teen magazines stopped calling, Cassidy tried to reinvent himself. In 1972, he posed nude for Rolling Stone, not for shock value, but to be seen as more than a bubblegum idol. But the public never let go of Keith Partridge, and Cassidy never truly escaped that ghost. The years brought more pain than redemption. Failed marriages, a dwindling bank account, and an escalating dependence on alcohol gradually eroded the public's memory of the once unstoppable pop icon. In 2015, he filed for bankruptcy. DUIs piled up. Cassidy, once a clean-cut idol, now appeared in mugshots and courtrooms. The deterioration wasn't due to inherited illness. It was self-inflicted, the long-term result of dependency and emotional exhaustion. Cassidy's health had been in sharp decline. By late 2017, he was battling liver disease and multiple organ failure. The world didn't know how serious it had become until mid-November when he collapsed at home. At the hospital, doctors confirmed the worst. His organs were shutting down, and it was too late for a transplant. His body was losing the fight. But during those final days, something changed. He wasn't the pop star, the fallen idol, or the headline. He was just David. Nurses described him as gentle, aware, and open. Family and friends visited, some knowing they were saying goodbye. He shared moments of clarity, moments that were almost like redemption. Then came the final sentence, quiet yet piercing, a whisper with the weight of a lifetime. So much wasted time. That single line uttered by Cassidy as the end approached captured everything. The fame, the fallout, the regrets, the lessons, all in one breath. It wasn't just a goodbye. It was a reckoning. One that still echoes in the hearts of those who grew up watching him, loving him, and wondering how something so bright could ever fade. In a dimly lit hospital room, just past midnight on November 21, 2017, a fading voice broke through the mechanical beeping of machines. It wasn't a dramatic final monologue, just 4 soft-spoken words. But those words would echo far beyond the sterile walls of that hospital, carving a permanent place in the hearts of millions. I'm proud of you. Quiet, tender, devastating. Moments later, another whisper followed. So much wasted time. The simplicity of the statement belied its emotional magnitude. It wasn't just a farewell, it was a confession, a truth long buried beneath decades of fame, faltering relationships, and the storm of a life lived under a spotlight too bright to hide in. Katie Cassidy, his daughter and a successful actress in her own right, was the one who chose to share those final words with the world. Her tweet didn't scream grief, it whispered it. My dad's last words to me were, "I'm proud of you. I'll cherish them forever," she wrote. Just like that, David Cassidy's legacy shifted. Fans who had grown up with posters of the Partridge Family on their walls now saw the idol not in bell-bottoms and big hair, but as a fragile, fading father reaching for a daughter he'd hardly known. And it hit a nerve. Suddenly, Cassidy wasn't just a teen idol. He was every distant parent who ran out of time, every regret that comes too late. That moment, caught between heartbreak and healing, cracked open a conversation far bigger than celebrity gossip. People wanted to believe it was closure. Maybe it was. But beneath those 4 words was a depth of yearning, perhaps a quiet plea for forgiveness. Psychologists say that final words often reveal our truest selves. What we regret, what we treasure, what we wish we could change. Cassidy's seemed to carry all 3. So much wasted time. That was the ghost in the room. The honesty that peeled back decades of performance. One could argue that Cassidy's greatest act wasn't on stage, but in that final admission, raw and unpolished, spoken to a daughter who grew up watching him more on TV than across the dinner table. Those who stood by him in those last hours described a man weathered but not broken. The sparkle hadn't vanished, just dimmed. At moments he found the strength to hum songs from his glory days. Partridge Family tunes floated softly in the room, his comfort blanket. When nurses spoke of his fans, his lips curled into a faint smile. Gratitude had replaced the pressure of the past, but reality was closing in fast. His liver and kidneys were failing, and doctors no longer offered treatment. Only time. That window, once wide open with promise, was now barely a crack. Loved ones gathered. Katie, other family members, a few close friends. What do you say when you know the end is near? Sometimes you don't say anything. You just hold hands, share a look, offer presents. Fans often ask what their idols are really like behind closed doors. Cassidy's last hours gave them an answer. Quiet, vulnerable, human. And maybe that's what we needed most to remember him by. Katie's story isn't just one of loss, it's one of rediscovery. The daughter of a cultural icon, raised mostly apart from his world, she didn't grow up basking in her father's spotlight. She carved out her own, forging a career that didn't rely on his name. But that didn't erase the longing. That didn't silence the questions. When Cassidy died, Katie was 31, old enough to understand the complexities of their relationship, wise enough to speak of him with both love and clarity. She didn't grandstand her grief. She simply let his final words echo in the spaces between. Years later, in April 2025, what would have been David Cassidy's 75th birthday came with bittersweet timing. Katie had been displaced due to a wildfire in the Pacific Palisades. But even amid chaos, she found a quiet corner to light a candle. "I celebrate him quietly," she said in a rare public moment. There were no interviews, no press tours, just reflection. I think about those final words often, and in that simplicity lay a profound truth. Grief doesn't always come in loud sobs. Sometimes it's a whisper, a flickering flame, a silent nod to what was lost and what was found in its place. The contrast between public legacy and private reckoning lies at the heart of this story. Katie's journey with her father wasn't one of picture-perfect memories. It was messy, distant, real. But in the end, she chose love. She chose to remember the words, not the silence that came before. That decision, a daughter embracing the imperfect humanity of her father, became the story's quiet miracle. It showed us all that legacy isn't just what we leave behind. It's how we choose to carry it forward. David Cassidy's life was a whirlwind of applause, flashing cameras, and magazine covers. But in his final chapter, it wasn't the fame that defined him. It was a soft-spoken message to a daughter he barely knew. A reminder that no matter how many records you sell, the most lasting impressions are made in moments of raw honesty. And sometimes, just sometimes, those moments come too late. And still, they matter. The silence of that hospital room said more than any applause ever could. No stage lights, no screaming fans, just the weight of decades, choices, and a heart that had finally said enough. David Cassidy, the man who once stood beneath spotlights, radiating youthful energy and endless charm, left this world in stillness. But his final words stirred a storm. "I'm proud of you." Simple, intimate, unexpected, as if whispered through time, not just to his daughter, but to anyone still trying, still reaching for meaning. And then the phrase that still hangs in the air like fog, "So much wasted time." That one sentence didn't just break hearts, it shattered illusions. It was a mirror, forcing millions to look inward, questioning how they were spending their precious hours. For someone whose life had been a televised dream, Cassidy's parting words were anything but scripted. They were raw, haunting, and, ironically, more alive than most of his career-defining performances. One moment he was a teen heartthrob singing "I Think I Love You." The next, a man reflecting on the very moments he never got back. The contrast is chilling. Fame gave him everything: adulation, wealth, a place in history. But it also carved out a lonely stage where vulnerability had no place. His confession about the emptiness behind the fame, the pain of chasing an image the world demanded but he never fully owned, hit harder than any chart topper ever could. And then there's the opulence, the life he led that so many envied. Cassidy wasn't just a face on magazine covers, he was a man of serious means. His portfolio glittered with high-end real estate, from sprawling mansions in Fort Lauderdale to his former California hideaway, each boasting custom interiors, beach views, and six-figure art collections. Cassidy had a known passion for classic cars. His collection once included a Jaguar E-Type and a 1968 Ford Mustang Shelby GT 500, vehicles as iconic as the man himself. On his wrist, Cartier and Rolex alternated appearances, subtle yet unmistakable markers of a life shaped by success. He even had partial ownership in a small private jet charter company, a nod to his years of touring. His business ventures included production company investments, licensing deals for memorabilia, and even a short-lived vineyard partnership in the late 90s. Financially cautious later in life, Cassidy reportedly carried a health and income insurance policy worth millions, a safety net shaped by years of uncertainty. If there's one financial lesson his story leaves us, it's this: wealth without emotional clarity offers no peace. Build assets, yes, but never at the cost of your time or your truth. So much wasted time. That line doesn't fade. It echoes louder as days pass. It's now stitched into motivational talks, journal covers, even tattooed on those seeking daily reminders to live fully. Cassidy's regret became our wake-up call. Not because it was dramatic, but because it was real. That's the power of truth. It cuts through noise, through fame, through decades. His story forces us to ask, are we reaching out enough? Are we letting fear decide what we say, what we do, who we love? Or are we daring to live, really live? As the documentary montages roll, spliced with footage of a young Cassidy grinning beneath stadium lights, the contrast is impossible to ignore. The man we watched dancing through teenage hearts was also a man quietly questioning if it had all been worth it. That dichotomy, the shimmer and the sorrow, forms the legacy he never scripted but ultimately delivered. In the end, Cassidy did something most celebrities don't get the chance to do. He rewrote his ending. Not with headlines or scandals, but with a whisper that changed lives. I'm proud of you. It wasn't just a farewell. It was a challenge, a benediction. To stop wasting time. To love while you can. To speak while the heart still beats and the eyes still meet. His final message didn't just conclude a life, it ignited a movement. David Cassidy reminded us that the real legacy isn't fame. It's connection. It's honesty. It's how you made others feel and what you inspired them to do. In that quiet hospital room with no cameras rolling, he gave his final and greatest performance. And maybe, just maybe, it's the one that will echo the longest. And that's the incredible, emotional final chapter in the life of David Cassidy. A teen idol whose charm lit up millions of hearts, but whose last words spoke to something far deeper than fame.